I have the good fortune of working with some absolutely incredible, multi-talented artists, engineers, business leaders, activists, you name it. In my career, I've just been incredibly fortunate to work with some people who have been phenomenal. And I look at them and I just kind of am in awe of their wisdom, of their kind of innate ability to see things that I can't see, their innate ability to create things that I can't create, and to find in them a source of inspiration for me to try harder, to strive for even greater goals and even greater impact. So it's a really good position to be in to kind of draw in that kind of talent, because you're never at a loss looking around you to want to achieve a greater vision of what you could see as a potential future for yourself and for the work that you're doing. I started noticing that really talented people who were even more advanced in their careers than I was, I started to notice that they had gravitated to me and in my career, had started expressing interest in me and my career at a fairly early stage of my academic career. And so this was really confusing, to say the least, because as an early stage researcher, you're often, struggling with imposter syndrome, kind of fearing for your life that everybody's going to discover that you're just a fraud, that you can't actually do research, and that the research that you have done is completely illegitimate for this reason, that reason, or the other reason. And so when a senior researcher starts expressing interest in your career, you're kind of skeptical at first, and you're kind of looking at them going, but why do you care about what I'm doing? That's kind of odd. That skepticism was short-lived, at least in my work, because I realized very quickly that these senior researchers had a genuine invested interest in mentoring me and helping me along in my career. And so it was a really critical opportunity for me to kind of discover what I want out of my work and to discover a lot more of the intimate details behind what those senior researchers were doing in their fields of study, which was really, really cool to see kind of what's happening behind the scenes. A lot of times for the greatest academics out there, the only things you see is kind of the tip of the iceberg when they publish an article or when there's announcements about a big grant that they've received. You never really get to see behind the scenes what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, kind of how the sausage is made in some sense. And so it was really cool when I first started connecting to some of these senior researchers in my field to get that behind the scenes view and to understand a little bit more about the career path that I had chosen for myself and what that might look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years even in the future. One of the first times that this had gone down, I was in the US outside of Washington, D.C., and I was collecting some data there. And I had gotten an email pretty well out of the blue from someone that I knew of who was working in my field, but who was advanced maybe 10 or 15 years ahead of me in terms of their own career. And so I was kind of taken aback and a little bit flattered that they had even contacted me. I had absolutely no time in my schedule. I was running back-to-back interviews for most of the time that I was there. And when I wasn't doing that, I was trying to catch up with my family. And so when they emailed me, they requested a chance to kind of connect in person. And they asked me, they basically said, whenever you want to get together, I'm available, which for a lot of senior researchers is that's a big thing for them to say, because most of them are every minute of the day is scheduled. So the fact that this person was sitting there going, hey, you tell me when you're available and I got you, let's connect and let's meet in person and we can talk about your research. That was what he ostensibly had messaged me about. I'm interested in your work. And so I'm sitting there a little bit shocked, a little bit humbled, and a little bit scared that the whole thing just seemed completely out of sync with where I thought I was in my career. Anyways, I had no time available. The only spot that I could fit in my calendar was a breakfast meeting at some ungodly hour like 7:30 a.m. or 8 a.m. And I asked this person if they would meet me at this random place near Washington, D.C. to have breakfast together and we could meet and just chat. And I was astonished because when you meet someone who, in some sense, is a person that you look up to, then you expect to connect with them and just to listen to what they have to say about all the work that they're doing. Lo and behold, that was not what breakfast was about. When we sat down to breakfast, he basically just asked me to tell him about the work that I was doing. And so I did. I did my best. And as an early stage academic, it can be incredibly challenging to talk about your research for a couple of reasons. One, most of the time, you don't even know what you're doing. So you have no idea how to talk to another person about it. Two, the very few things you know about are extremely complex in your head, and it's tough to be able to say, to put into words what you think you're looking at, studying, investigating. So I'm trying and struggling to kind of communicate to him, what is the work that I'm doing all about? Why is it valuable? Who cares? And trying to kind of impress upon him, like, what's the importance of these issues that I was researching? Well, he was kind enough and generous enough to listen intently, ping pong back and forth some ideas. And he and I, to this day, continue to work together. And I consider him a very close colleague and someone that I trust and that I care about. And so it's crazy to imagine how these sort of things kind of work themselves out. But I think leveraging these sorts of relationships can be really valuable in your career, and finding ways of taking that network that you're connected to in order to draw in even more talented people can also be really, really useful because there's strength in those relationships. And there's kind of this sense of gravitational pull. When you put enough people into the same area connected for one reason or another, and if they have enough talent, then they tend to draw talented people into those spaces. So it's not always an organic system where somebody is not doing anything and then suddenly they discover a passion and then they pursue it for the rest of their lives. A lot of times those passions are drawn out of a connection to someone who is inspiring work in that area or in that field. And a lot of my mentors did that for me. They inspired a passion for my work. And this has been incredibly important to my career. If there weren't those individuals, there's less of a likelihood that I would have just found it in myself to kind of continue to do this work unabated and with kind of blinders on and just continue to kind of push. It was those sources of inspiration that helped renew my energy, help renew my motivation and passion for my field of study. Now, I don't know if it's better to seek out talented people and try to actively make a connection with them or to let those gravitational waves draw those individuals into your life. I don't know what's better. I've gotten the chance to do a lot of both. I've gotten the chance to find people who are talented and actually seek them out and find them and try my best to work with them. And then there's been times that those individuals have just gravitated to my life. So maybe it's just a little bit of both. Maybe that's the best strategy here. My main takeaway, though, is to use your energy, use your passion area as a kind of a guide for understanding who would be important for you to connect with as a source of inspiration, or who would be important to try to draw you into as a source of talent and expertise and new expertise. So use your energy as a guide. If you find that energy is matched by those individuals, great. I think you have a good collaborator there. If for whatever reason you find that energy is kind of in maybe not opposing camps, but just in misaligned in some way, out of step, then maybe that's not the best connection to make. And my call to action is just a question. How do you identify talent? I always found this as an incredibly perplexing question, because I've not been great historically at being able to look at somebody, look at their CV, and be able to say, yes, this person's going to be great for collaborating with, for doing this sort of work with. And so I'm interested in what sort of chances there are to improving that skill. So how do you identify talented people in your life?